This is another installment of my seashell stories. And this morning, I thought I would talk about a seashell that I received as a gift from a coworker of mine. It's the Guyanese Chank. Relative to my hand, you can see about how big it is. It's not, it's like 3 inches, 2.5 inches maybe. But the backstory to it is one, it was a gift from a coworker, which I always like those stories. Because that's the whole idea of having interaction with people that have interests in seashells. And the other part of the story, when I walk the beach, if I come across a bone or some strange bone or whatever, this woman, she has a bone collection, and so I would give her the bones, and so she thought it was an appropriate payback, I guess, to give me one of her shells that she had gotten a while back. And so the backstory, though, with the backstory, I guess, to it is that this was a shell that was given to her by her husband from Guyana. He lived there, and he found it on the beach and gave it to me. Now, the interesting thing about this that goes just on the shell side is that this particular breed of snail was not described. When I got it, I at first it looked like it. The general body plan of the thick, business here, and then having the little things inside the here, leads you to think that it is in the Chank family, but it's not just like a regular one. If you've seen the other Chanks from the Caribbean, they're big and thick and they have knobs and stuff. So anyway, when I looked it up, turns out that this particular type hadn't been described until the 80s. And so that's, I always find that interesting, in terms of rarity. Rarity is just a matter of who finds it and how much you find it and when you find it, I guess. And so, like the Juno, the old story with the Juno's volute in Florida. People that are familiar with that from shell collecting. The Juno's volute's a real pretty shell. It's almost about the same size as this. Gets a little bit bigger, but it was like black with white dots, or white with black dots. And it was, a big deal back then. It was like, oh wow, get a Juno's volute was one of the rarest. It was like a hot thing at the time. And then they found like a pocket of them where there was like, thousands, and then, nobody was interested. And that's kind of the nature of shell collecting. In terms of value, it's not like comic book collecting, where the value can potentially go up if you have a really, culturally the people are interested in, let's say right now, the Avengers or something. But anyway, it usually always goes down, except if there's a certain beauty to the shell, which kind of reminds me of the biblical story of the man who's seeking pearls. He finds one of great value and he sells everything that he has to acquire the one pearl. So anyway, if you're a connoisseur of shells, it's your particular aesthetic with the shell. So anyway, with this one, that it was, one of those ones that's only recently described in the 80s, I thought that was neat, because that would have, at the time, made this like one of the rarer shells in the world. And then, but I guess its aesthetic didn't catch on, and people weren't like, oh, we got to get ourselves a Guyanese Chank, And then it, been a big rush on Guyanese Chanks, like Bitcoin, almost. So anyway, the other neat thing about this is, if you see these breaks in the shell. You know, it's not a perfect specimen, obviously, by far, but it's perfect in the sense that it might give us an indication of how the thing lived. Um, and if you compare that to the channeled whelks that we have around here, or any other kind of whelk, the animal may just be one of those type that crawls along, and then when it comes to a clam, goes and sticks its shell down, and the clam tries to close and it breaks a piece off, but he gets to stick his proboscis or mouth into the clam and digest, eat it and digest it. So, so it has a lot of those things. I mean, this thing's done battle. But in terms, so there's two things. It could either be that it was being eaten or it was eating. So it was either a very active eater. Up here, it's so gnarly that it almost seems like somebody was chewing on it, as opposed to it sticking its shell edge into a potential, meal. So, but that tells us something about its history. It's either been very desired by other animals, or it's been very active in killing other animals. It gives you its history written in its shell. Anyway, that's my shell story for today, and don't forget to subscribe if you like stuff about seashells, all kinds of diverse topics, music, violin making, mushrooms. Check it out, you'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching.